So much to dig into this morning with the roundtable, and I've got a perfect group to do it. To my left, political consultants and communications strategists Adolph Mongo and Andrea Bitely. On the other side, well, we kind of secluded the attorneys over here. Hope CEO Portia Roberson and former Royal Oak Mayor Dennis Cowan. Great to see everybody. Let's start. Well, what a busy week. Why don't we start with our lawyers over here about this one? Because a judge has ruled the president can legally keep laying people off, keep firing people. But Portia, what do you make of this strategy that seems to be just unplugging entire departments to see if it'll run right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the issue. And it's funny because watching it over the last few weeks, I've wondered about, listen, I believe that the president can come in and assess, and I think that even as a Democrat, we want him to find any sort of malfeasance or money being spent that shouldn't be spent. But the reality of it is that to go into the federal government and not look carefully at what can actually be cut and just sort of, like you said, unplugging everything, ending up in a state where they have to try and call people back because they fired people and they then realize they shouldn't have fired that person, but the person can't access their email, so they don't know if they're hired or fired. I mean, it's just, it's a calamity that I don't know how soon we can recover from because, again, these are people in roles and in positions and in departments that are necessary for not only the country to work, but obviously local areas as well as state areas.
Dennis, I would think the plus side here is, hey, but there's lots of savings to be had, and I think the number they're claiming right now is $55 billion, although there have been several reports that poke holes in the validity of that, and the president himself has actually said hundreds of billions of dollars, so that those two numbers don't jive. But do you believe this is actual savings we're seeing right now?
The depth and the scope of what they found to date is breathtaking, and I think the numbers are going to go much higher. We haven't even touched the Defense Department yet.
And
we know, $5,000 toilets and all kinds of craziness that's gone on there over the years. Look at this. This review is long overdue, and whoever does it, and in this case it's Elon Musk, they're going to get all the brickbats and all the criticism because they're the first one in. But the reality is, whether you use a scalpel, an axe, or a chainsaw, it's going to be difficult, and there's going to be some errors, but the government will continue running, and the taxpayers will enjoy the savings, and quite frankly, the public is with the president on this issue.
Well, one of the things you mentioned Elon Musk. I'll come to the side of the table, and Adolph.
It's going to be a big problem. And I'm not saying there's waste in federal government. I lived in D.C. You got experienced people that you need. So if you take an axe and chop everybody off, who's going to be running some of these departments? You can't bring in inexperienced people like he has done in his cabinet. No, it's like the military. I was in the military. If you're going to get rid of the leadership in the military, you don't get rid of the experienced NCOs and all the others that make the military work. You get rid of the waste at the top. I think it's a bad deal that you go in and say, okay, we're getting everybody out. We're going to air traffic controllers. Bye. Everybody's gone. And then all of a sudden, you got all these planes dropping from the sky. I'm not saying
they're
it's related, but you know, it looks bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, they need to be careful. Elon Musk, he became the richest man in the world, not because he was stupid, but I think too much politics is what they're doing. Is saying, let's get rid of this, let's get rid of that. They're going to have to really think about who they need to get rid of.
One of the voices I heard this week was a guy who voted for Trump 3 times, says he believes there's waste, he's a federal worker, but his issue was, Andrea, with the way Elon Musk was going about this. What do you make of that part of it?
The real challenge that we've seen, and here in Michigan, a lot of our federal employees are people that work in the Social Security Administration and the Veteran Affairs areas, support services that Michiganders use on a regular basis and maybe don't even realize that they're federal programs. And I heard the story. The New York Times featured a Michigan resident who worked for the VA, who was a combat veteran himself, and lost his job and found out by email with no phone call, no anything. And his job was to support other veterans with PTSD and other issues that are a result of serving our country. So I think a lot of folks, I personally am very supportive of the idea of reducing the size of government. Pay less in taxes, give me a refund for some of what has gone on over the years that has not been good for the American people. But I'm concerned about the cuts at USAID because that soft power is what gave us a win in the Cold War. That aspect of what we don't even realize the federal government does is going to become very real very quickly.
Do anybody here think that once this all kind of the dust settles, we might see a lot of these folks, if they can hire them back, come back to work?
Some of them not going to come back.
Right.
Yeah, there's the chilling effect for sure.
Especially by the way they were fighting.
Yeah, I got a cousin that worked, 30-something years in the IRS, and he retired just before Trump got back in office, and he said he is so happy because if they would have fired him, he said, and they wanted him to come back, he said, no, not coming back, and you're going to get a lot of that.
Well, and I mean, the other concern is that for some of the people who took the buyout, so to speak, and were supposed to get severance packages through September, they've already been told that those severance packages are not going to exist for them, that they're not actually going to get the money that they thought they were owed. So now you've got people who are scrambling to find jobs in an economy that really, at this point, we haven't seen the creation of jobs that Trump was going to do on day one. In fact, what we've seen is a lot of people getting unemployed and trying to figure out where their next steps and where they should go next.
But how's somebody that worked 20 years or 25 years is going to go out and
I agree
and get another job? Where?
Right. And the federal government won't be giving those grants and those dollars to organizations that might employ them otherwise.
Right.
So DC, there was a headline a few weeks ago, is DC going to become Detroit? Which harkens back to some really dark times for us. But when you have a one industry town, which DC is a one industry town, it can be extremely challenging when that industry is reduced.
They're going to feel what we felt with the auto industry when you know us like a heroin addict. When we didn't get our heroin, the city went into decay.
Yes.
When I lived in D.C., one of the things I would tell people who were so shocked about Detroit going into bankruptcy or, at the cusp of going into bankruptcy was, think about if we laid off people or the industry of the federal government didn't exist in the DMV, right? Same thing would have happened here. So we don't think about how many people, how the economy is generated in D.C. and Maryland and Virginia from people who work in the federal government. And that includes all the restaurant owners, all of the other ancillary businesses that are created because you have all these people working for the federal government.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned restaurant owners. Let me ask you just about the compromise, Dennis. I'll bring you in here. That happened in Lansing Friday. I saw a lot of people say we struck the balance that was needed here. What did you make of the agreement that was finally reached here?
Well, I want to tell you, I'm really encouraged. And we had bipartisan. Both sides got together, knew there were problems with this law that was passed originally, and heard from a lot of different stakeholders in the restaurant industry, and they came to a compromise. I know I read the Michigan Chamber this morning was very supportive. They said we didn't get everything we wanted, but we made a lot of progress here. So I'm very encouraged by it. I hope this is a harbinger of things to come. We've got a divided legislature, and the governor lately hasn't been maybe as influential as other governors have been in the process. So I think what's going to happen is it's going to be up to the two leaders, and hopefully good things are going to happen and come from this.
All right, I'm down to 1 minute because we went rogue here. Quickly, with the open races, governor, Detroit mayor, and the Senate seat. Biggest surprise you see coming? Final thought from everybody, Adolph. Is there anything that you're waiting?
Doug is running as an independent, and he's a guy that loves to do polling. And I guess his polling as a Democrat didn't look so hot. So I'm not surprised.
Andrew?
Also not surprised about Doug, and I'm very interested to see what Pete Buttigieg does if he chooses to run for the Senate seat or not.
Waiting for somebody to jump in that race, Portia.
I think it's been interesting to see how many mayoral candidates we already have. I think
heard
there's
this
one or
from a
two
candidate.
more.
They expected 10 when it's all done. Do you buy that?
I think we're there. I mean, I think
11,
we're close. We're at
5 officially.
No. Let's make that very clear.
Dennis?
Just a historical fact, and I'm not advocating for anybody in the mayoral race, but A sitting city council member has not been elected mayor since 1957. Louis
There's your
Mariano.
final
So they'll have
stat.
to change history in order to win.
Let's
And
see
he
if
was
it
a
happens.
crook.
More Flashpoint coming up next.